This is the Whole Care Network, helping you tell your story one podcast at a time. Content presented in the following podcast is for information purposes only. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guest and may not represent the views and opinions of the Whole Care Network. Always consult with your physician for any medical advice, and always consult with your attorney for any legal advice. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
Hello, beautiful friend. How are you? Hope you're doing fantastic. Today, I want you to introduce to Elizabeth Miller. She's another amazing surprise. She's the founder of Happy Healthy Caregiver, which I think the name of it says a lot about it. So we want you happy and healthy so you can be a caregiver. She is a certified elder consultant. She is an amazing person. She's always willing to help. She's always willing to share her knowledge. She's super active on social media. So welcome, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Isabel. I'm grateful that caregiving has brought us together.
I agree. You're one of my favorite acquaintances
Thank you.
in this new era in my life.
Yeah, I mean, nobody really wants to do this. And so I think to look at some of the blessings and the things that have happened in caregiving for me has been all of the amazing people that I have met, peers of mine that are, also trying to help family caregivers and figure what that looks like, companies that are doing some amazing things. And then the people that I've met through my podcast, which is how we originally met in speaking to you on the Happy Healthy Caregiver podcast. So that's, I think, been one of the greatest joys really about the whole caregiving process.
You're really good at sharing your experiences and guiding people. Can you tell us more about it?
I essentially am creating through Happy Healthy Caregiver what I wish existed for me. So back in 2014, my family, we call that the spiral year, when things were just all kind of come crashing down at once. And I know that caregivers can know exactly what that feels like. And so I was working full time. My husband was working full time. We were supposedly in the peak of our earning years. Our kids are in middle school. So these fundamental years where they really need some parental oversight, right? Of how you're shaping them. And of course, they're busy in activities and sports and things. And then at the same time, our parents were declining. So, and it was just one thing after another. And we just felt like we were drowning. We felt overwhelmed. We felt isolated, like that we were the only people in the world this was happening to. And we just felt like, why is this so freaking hard? Like, why is this so hard to take care of people and juggle other responsibilities? And we were losing ourselves. Like, it was just kind of felt like we were just kind of like, okay, tag, you've got this and I've got that. And it was just trying to manage chaos like every day. And then new chaos kept kind of coming. So that part of my life was dark, unhealthy, unhappy. And that was kind of really what informed okay, this is my life. Like I need to figure this out to do things differently so that I can put us on a better path, not just for myself, but for my whole family and what that could look like. And so it was a mindset shift that I had that said, okay, I know what this looks like, to care for people that have made different health choices in their life that have led down this path where they need more help and care from our family. And I don't like it. I don't want to repeat the same thing. So how can I do this differently? And that whole mindset shift was what the basis of Happy Healthy Caregiver started from.
I'm so jealous that you thought about Happy Healthy Caregiver. Like, I know your name.
Oh, you want the business name? It's trademarked, Isabel. So hands off. Yeah. And people try to call me that. They're like, oh, it's the Happy Healthy Caregiver. I'm like, no, 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 no. Like this is a mantra. This is a mindset of what we're all striving for. I don't want people to think that I've got it all figured out. Like, I'm still trying on self-care habits and routines, and I have to constantly check in with myself to say, does this feel good? Is this what I need right now? Is this giving me peace of mind? Is it providing the energy that I need? And I'm still a caregiver. Like, my parents are deceased, sadly. My mother-in-law is deceased, sadly. And now, with my siblings, we're sharing the care to help my older brother who was born with a developmental and intellectual disability. So care is really like, there's no escaping it. We know that. I'm in a big family, so I know that there's going to be many, many instances where care is going to be required of me. So how can I like armor up for that and try to mitigate it, the best that I can for me and for my family? It's kind of inevitable.
One of the things that I like describing care as is doing something for somebody else. And you can care for anybody, like whatever you do, even people you don't know. Like, for example, yesterday we went for pizza, a couple of friends and I, and this person left a water cup on top of his car. And my friend went and, hey, you left your water on top of your car. So that was an act of care for me.
Exactly. Yeah, you're helping that person stay hydrated so that they may have a long ride ahead of them, and how annoying would that be? So I do think there's sprinkling kindness around like confetti just in our daily life. That is care, to your point, and that also makes us feel good.
Exactly. Yes, it is about you feeling good, but when you're doing this full time, you don't feel good all the time. And you talk about going back to you and like touching base with you. So how do you keep doing this over the period of time?
Mm. It has evolved for me. Like, I've been in this business now for 9 years, which is hard to believe. And it has changed. Initially when I had this mindset shift, I was very hyper focused on physical self-care. So nutrition and exercise. And it makes sense because when I was looking at my parents, like, they were morbidly obese, they had diabetes and heart disease and sleep apnea and all of these things that were a result of lifestyle choices that they had made. So that was kind of what I was seeing. And so that was where I first started, was just like, okay, how can I improve my nutrition? How can I meal plan better? How can I get little more steps in my day, and trying those different things. And it wasn't until later that I really started to recognize that self-care is not just that. It is about a lot of different activities. And I really see it, and I talk about it, and I share content on 8 categories of self-care. So, beyond physical, there's emotional, financial, spiritual self-care, practical, intellectual, social, and professional. All of those things, I think, combined, make you kind of a whole and happy and healthy person overall. And what's going to work for you, Isabel, is not going to be the same thing that works for me. Like, we're all unique snowflakes in this world. And so we have to try them on, just like we try on clothes, and see what's going to make us feel good and what's going to fit and what's going to be practical and sustainable for us. And so it's been kind of a game, I think, and it kind of continues to be a game. I love to kind of hear what works for other people, which is why I enjoy doing the podcast so much, is to unpack for family caregivers what's worked for them in caregiving and self-care. And then I'm constantly learning new ideas, and there's things that I haven't yet tried that I want to see if, how they make me feel. And I kind of put everything through a litmus test of like, does it make me feel more energized? Does it give me peace of mind? And is it just plain fun? If any of those 3 things are true, then I'm going to keep doing it.
I really like this part of fun. One of the podcasts that I follow, it is Hustle and Flow by Heather Hubbard, for everybody.
I'm going to write it down because, see, it's intellectual self-care, hustle and flow. I love to try out new podcasts too.
It is amazing, this podcast world as well. And she just released a series of, one was hustle, one was flow, and then she added the fun part. I believe we often forget about having fun. Like, once we're probably out of elementary school, we're not allowed to have fun. We're always hustling. And
Yeah.
eventually we'll learn how to flow with the hustle, but we're not learning how to have fun. What are things that like you could
Yeah.
share with us about fun?
I mean, that's an important part of what I hopefully put out into the world. And so one of the things that we do as a family, and I encourage my friends to do it, my kids' friends are now doing it, and people who follow Happy Healthy Caregiver, is like we're in 2024. So creating like your 20 for 24 list. And those things are not resolutions. Those are not like lose weight or do this. No, they are like fun things that I want to do in my life. And I have mine, posted behind me, but it's things that bring me joy, like to sit down and put together a jigsaw puzzle, to maybe try a new hike. I love to have a wine flight. So go to a restaurant that's going to have something that I love to try new restaurants. I want to, have maybe a new experience of a travel experience in particular. So one of the things I put on my list this year is I want to go to Dollywood. And so they're attainable things, but if I don't write them down and if people don't write them down, then just another calendar year kind of goes by and we are not kind of infusing that fun into our life. And what I love about doing this with my family is that they're also creating their lists and to see where we can overlap. And then it's like someone's birthday's coming up or Mother's Day or Father's Day. And it's like, we can refer to this and say, well, what do we want to do together? And what's something that we can make happen? Or just putting it out into the world. You'd say, as a caregiver who maybe doesn't have a lot of time to coordinate these things, people are constantly asking you, what can I do to help? Here's my list. This is some of the fun things that I would like to do this year. I want to go to a live comedy show. Can you help make that happen? And that feels like people can take that and say, yeah, I can help you make that happen. So I think it's important to find this commonality in that and to be intentional. And I think that's the key word I want people to take away from this is like, it takes intention. We are not going to find time to do these things, especially as a family caregiver. Like we have got to be intentional and create the time for it, or we're going to burn out. And that's what we don't want to happen.
We don't want to burn out.
No burnout.
Do you include like mindfulness practices with all of this? Because you're talking about being intentional. One of the podcasts for March, and I don't remember which day it is, but for all of you out there, I'll put this in the show notes. I will refer this to that podcast about being like bringing that kind of fun and having like different activities and making hobbies. Yeah, more in because this is just fun, but hobbies are like continuous fun, a fun routine, I would say. How do you find mindfulness in all of this process?
Yeah. I mean, mindfulness for me is like one of those things that I tried on to see, people say it worked for them, like you hear about mindfulness and meditation and whether it's saying, the loving kindness prayer or going and meditating. And so, and initially I was like, there's so many different flavors of it too that you can try on. And it's like, oh, maybe this way didn't work for me, but another way worked. And so I have found that I'm best with like a guided meditation that's about 10 minutes long. And I really, really enjoy doing it most in a sauna. So I used to do it in a sauna when I would go to the gym, like at the end of my workout. Now I'm a Hot Works member. So we have, there's hot yoga and Pilates and so forth. So sometimes I'll book the room after and I'll stay in there to have some mindfulness time there myself. But it's one of those things I think we have to kind of try it on and see how it works. But there's lots of different ways. You can have a walking meditation and be mindful. The Insight Timer app and just breathing, like checking in with yourself and doing body scans. So try on different things. It's super accessible. Like you can do it anywhere. Does it cost anything? A lot of times if you want a guided thing, you can find it on YouTube. So it is one of those things that's easy to try on. Sometimes for me, like in addition to doing the happy part, which is like the 20 for 24, I also do something called You Pick 12. And so there's 12 months in the year and I focus on one healthy habit for the month. And I'm not perfect. I've thought of different healthy habits that I wanted to be intentional about in 2024. And I wrote them on little slips of paper and I put them in a container and I draw it once a month. And that way it doesn't feel overwhelming to me. Like, oh, I've got to change my whole life, and at the beginning of the year, it's like the first one that I pulled out for January was like, drink more hot lemon water and or green tea. Like I know that that's good for getting rid of your free radicals and your toxins and helping with your gut health. So, and that was a great thing to do in January too, because it's cold outside, right? So this month has been a little bit harder. Mine is either to have a smoothie or a vegetarian dish for breakfast or lunch. But again, I'm trying to like increase my level of vegetable intake. And so I'm thinking like, all right, what's realistic that I could do that? And it doesn't happen every day, but it's something that it's a healthy intention. And then next month I'll pick a different habit. And sometimes what happens then is they stick, like you try them on and you're like, oh, I really like that. So it's not like I'm not drinking hot lemon water and tea in February. It's just that I'm moving on to something else, but I still found value in doing it. So it's like, it's kind of a good way to get intentional about your habits, your healthy habits.
I don't know if you have a processor at home, but we do most of our sauces with veggies. All of our
Mm,
with veggies, and then you add some kind of like either vegetable stock or chicken or beef or whatever your
it's a
preference.
great idea. So you make your own sauce.
Yes, and we have a processor. It's super easy to use. Maybe you can add more veggies because you're like eating a pasta full of veggies.
It's like a sneaky way to kind of get them in. I think that's a great idea to just kind of find those ways. And that's all self-care. And I think that's the part like where we think that self-care is one thing, but all of these things are helping us. And nobody's going to take care of this person mentally and physically better than I can.
Yeah, and it's like having other things in life because we're not just a caregiver.
No.
We are we're way more than that. You're a mom, you have a podcast, you run a business, you're a public speaker, you're connecting with people, you're a wife, you are.
Yeah, a girlfriend. I'm a sister, a friend, like all of those things. And all those relationships and roles are important to me.
And each one of those roles requires different things and different perspectives and different levels of care for the person you're interacting, even if you're getting another degree because you're always studying. So that also requires part of you.
Yeah, I have dreams and things that are important to me that there's people who kind of sit back and wait for things to happen. And then there's people who take action and make things happen. And I definitely view myself in that camp of like, I'm not going to wait for things to happen. I'm going to make things happen. And again, that's a mindset shift.
Yeah, completely. It is definitely a mindset shift.
Yeah.
I've been enjoying this conversation so much. I could
Thank
talk
you.
for 3 hours. My last question is, what would be something that you really wished you had when you started your journey as a caregiver?
One of the things that took me to kind of too long is that to just even realize I was one and how important connecting with a community of family caregivers served me later and maybe how that could have really helped me earlier on. And still today, like I meet so many family caregivers that wait until there's a crisis and it's like, oh, I'm okay right now. I'm okay. I'm fine. I'm fine. And I hate the feeling. It's fine is not a feeling, and I'm not gonna challenge you if you say that to me. It's like, are you really fine? We need that social self-care for one, like, we need other people. We don't wanna feel isolated, and the best tips and advice come from other family caregivers that are living it, and they're gonna understand, they're not gonna judge you for what you say, and so I think connecting to that group faster or creating my own group faster would be something that, if I could roll back time, I would do. And if you're listening to this and you have the chance to make that happen, there is a lot of ways that you can tap in to community in the caregiving world. There's in-person meetups, likely, search it in Google, or whatever browser, caregiver support in your name of your area. There's a lot of virtual things, obviously there's communities like mine and like yours, Isabel, but there's also different Facebook groups for different conditions and geographies. There's the daughterhood group that I'm a part of that does virtual support multiple times a month, either kind of an ad hoc support group or a topical support group. So there's a lot of things out there, but I think sometimes it's like it's almost like, I wear glasses and it looks like you wear glasses too, and it's like the time where you kind of realize like things are blurry and you're like looking around, you're like, is that blurry to you? I remember in college and people were like, oh, I can see that fine. And then you get glasses and you're kind of like, oh my gosh, I can see the world so much more clearly now. The same thing is true for caregiving. It's like if you're kind of in your own bubble And then you start meeting other people. And it's just like the more vulnerable you are, the more you share, the more transparent things become and more clear things become. And it helps you process and fast track to resources. So there's nothing bad about it. And so I just want people to not wait. Don't wait for the crisis. Like, be proactive. What if you actually connected with your community before you were drowning? Maybe you would prevent the drowning feeling from happening.
I have found that very interesting. And I think that is like how we as women have been educated. Like, you don't ask for help. You're always fine. You're always okay. You're here to serve. You are here to care for others. And we don't pay attention to, like, hey, we need help. And if you ask for help, you will
Yeah.
get help.
Yeah. Yeah. And it might look different than you thought it was going to look. Maybe you didn't even know that kind of help that you needed, but you've got to kind of make it so that the whole process is more sustainable.
Yeah, totally. So, everybody out there listening to this, reach out for help or reach out to people out there. I think I would add to that to make sure that that community is a positive one, because there
Mm,
are very negative groups out there. So, pay attention to that, because if you attract negative things, you will
that's a
probably
good point.
even.
Yeah. I mean, I found that even like I found that when I was starting my own stuff, like when I was writing, like my first few blog posts were kind of like depressing and it wasn't really who I am. Like I'm a glass half full kind of person. So that was also kind of a shift is like, no, I'm going to take action. Yes, this is rough, but what are the steps I'm going to do to kind of get back on the right path? Or what's something to test out here? And to your point, like on social media, there are a lot of places where the people just want to vent, and complain and oh, woe is me and so forth. That's not me. And so, I think it's important to kind of figure out who you want to surround yourself with. They say we're the result of the 5 people that we spend the most time with. But if you're on a community in an online communities that are negative and that's what you're allowing to be put into your brain, you're going to kind of be stuck there. So surrounding yourself with the people who are going to help you be better and get better is important. And I'm not saying I don't want to kind of preach this like toxic positivity. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying you have to have some kind of a gatekeeping process of what you're going to let soak into your world. And I know for me, like I had to really limit news, even like news is depressing for me, and particularly in an election year, like I hate it. So I have to really limit the sources. It doesn't mean I don't know what's going on in current events. I've got my husband who's going to keep me clued in on things. I can control that boundary. And I know how that negatively impacts my mental health. And it's important for me to protect it.
Completely. I don't think we pay enough attention to our surroundings. And I agree with you, it's not a toxic positivity. Like, there are times that we have to support friends, family, somebody else that is going through a really tough patch in their lives, and they're going to complain or they're going to vent, and that is probably their way of just expressing, and it's like, I need this out of my system, and that's okay. But then be proactive. Okay, you vented. This is crappy. What are you going to do next to make this perfect? To make this the best experience you can experience and not the worst. By the end of the day, you can say, yes, it was very tough, but so much out of it.
Yeah, I'm growing and learning. And my mom, I miss my mom, but she had something I would call her greatest hits album where she would complain about the same things. And it was like track 1, track 2, track 3. And I used to sit there and listen to it. And then it was kind of finally like, oh, wait, I hate this. I don't want to listen to this anymore. Like she makes me crazy that she just keeps, saying the same things over and over again and expecting different results. That's not how I'm wired. And so I finally told her, I said, Mom, we're not going to rehash the past. There's really nothing we can do to change it. If you want me to find you a therapist or a grief counselor or somebody you can talk to, but we are going to stay in the present and we're going to talk about the future. And, if you I didn't tell her I called it her greatest hits album, but I was like, if you want to do this, I'm going to walk away and I'm going to step away. And that, and sometimes it would happen and I'd be like, oh, remember we talked about this? I'm not your person to lean on this. It's too much for me to carry.
And that's great advice. Just building that boundary into what we like from our loved ones and from the news and from all of our environment. Just be conscious and aware of what we're putting in our heads. Thank you so much. Where can people find you?
I would love it. Yeah. Come stay connected through happyhealthycaregiver.com. You can find out about, speaking and some of the products I offer, the podcasts, social sites, all of that from happyhealthycaregiver.com.
I will make sure to put that on the notes. Thank you so much, everybody, to joining us today. It has been a lovely conversation, and see you next week.
This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time.